Okay, this is Learning Unit 2 for Professional Ethics, LJU 4802. I have chunked the learning unit specifically so that you can go and watch again, specifically those units that you do not understand. So once again, have your study guide before you, otherwise you will not follow me, and then this serves basically no purpose. So I am on page 11, and this is Learning Unit 2. And this unit concerns the philosophical approaches to ethics. Okay, now the first one is rule-governed ethics. Now let me rewind quickly to the general information where I spoke about the 50 Rand for the telephone call. In essence, if you are a rule-based person, then you stick to the rule. You do not question the rule, so the rules say you can charge 50 Rand, therefore you charge 50 Rand. You are ethical, you are fine. But then you fall under the rule-based approach, the philosophical approach of rule-based. Now this can be asked as a question on its own, let's say for 10, maybe 15 marks, to discuss the rule-based approach. And you will have to go to page 12 and it goes over to page 13. And you must go to your study guide and summarize and underline and make sure that you can at least give me 10 facts about the rule-based approach. Who is the father of the rule-based approach? What is the categorical imperative? What is the hypothetical imperative? What is the morality of duty? You must know that and be able to answer it to me so that I can give you a tick for every fact and you can get your 10 marks. On page 13 we go over to the traditional approach. Now this was also asked in a previous paper, and even if you go back beyond 2019 you will see that we ask it. Now before you go to your study guide and you study, this is a thing that you must understand and recognize. The current approach that we have in our legal system in South Africa is the traditional approach. It is equal to the rule-based approach. In other words, our current legal system functions on a duty-based approach, and that is the same as the traditional approach. Therefore, if I ask a question about the traditional approach, is it acceptable or not, I am indirectly also asking whether you agree with the rule-based approach or not. We have no choice. It is prescribed by government, so that is the current approach in our legal profession. Rule-based, you have the Legal Practice Act, you have a code of conduct, and you have to stick to that. Even if you do not agree, you have to stick to it. That is our legal way of doing. We've got an adversarial system, and that is the traditional, the current, the rule-based approach. So, now I ask on page 13, is the traditional approach to legal ethics acceptable? Now, if you get that question in the exams, you must first of all explain to me what is the traditional approach, therefore the rule-based approach. Then you have to decide for yourself whether you find it acceptable or not. And then I can have a second part to that question. What do you think will be a better approach? Then of course you cannot discuss the rule-based against, because that is the traditional approach. You will then have to discuss the other approaches that we're going to deal with just now. So on page 12 is the rule-based approach. On page 13, the traditional approach, and you will see that we like asking it. You have to refer to Schaefer, that is on the bottom of page 13, on page 14, Kukelet, and Ross when you discuss the traditional approach. Now, the traditional approach gives rise to a role differentiated approach. What do I mean? So we can ask the role differentiated approach separately as a question. It basically means that because of our adversarial system, where we have a judge and we have the legal team for the plaintiff and the legal team for the defendant, or in a criminal case, the state and the defense. These legal people want to win. They want to do the best possible for their client. And therefore, sometimes lawyers are unscrupulous in court cases. They become a little bit nasty or very defensive, things like that. Yet, in their personal life, they may be the chairperson of the church choir or the chairperson of the school governing body. Nice people and everybody loves them. So, why do they change? Sort of have two personalities. That is role differentiation. They argue that while in court, they play a role, like an actor on stage. Therefore, it's not who they really are. They're just playing the role of advocate or attorney. But in real life, they are good people. Now, the traditional approach and the way that our legal system works creates a scenario that you can play a role. There's criticism, there's people that say you cannot. You are who you are, whether you are in your profession or in your personal life. But go and see the detail in your study guide to be able to answer a question on the role differentiated approach. So we are touching on this on page 15. We're coming back to it again later. The second philosophical approach is utilitarianism, or another word that is more recognizable or understandable, consequentialism. Let's break it down. Consequence. In other words, this approach focuses on the consequence. What is the biggest joy for the biggest number of people affected by the decision? Just a quick example. We are not allowed in this country to sell your kidney for a transplant. But if you can sell your kidney and the person who needs the kidney can buy the kidney, then basically everyone benefits. And that is consequence. The consequence is good. You get money, the sick patient gets a kidney. All the bills are paid, everyone should be happy. Then that is a utilitarian approach. But you cannot unfortunately do it because it's against the law to sell your kidney. We fall back on the rule-based. It's the rule not to sell, therefore you can't. But if you approached it from a utilitarian perspective, the biggest joy for the biggest number. Once again, this can be a question on its own. Discuss utilitarianism for 10 marks. Or I can ask you to compare rule-based and utilitarianism. Maybe 20 marks, then it's 10 for the one, 10 for the other one. So you have to go through page 16 and 17 and prepare at least 10 facts on utilitarianism. Page 18. This is the most important of the philosophical approaches, because this is what I, as the lecturer at UNISA and in charge of professional ethics, what I'm striving for is that you should be a virtuous person. Now, a virtuous person or virtue ethics doesn't look at the rule nor at the consequences, but it looks at the person, the people acting. Are they good people or bad people? So page 18, virtue ethics, extremely important. Go and see who was the father. It was Aristotle. Go and see what he said. Go and think about, can ethics be taught or not? I don't have the answer. We can argue about it. I personally feel you can teach ethics. It can be taught. Some people feel it's inborn. I don't know. But go and get yourself 10 facts on page 18. Then on page 19 we have feminine ethics. This is dealt more under philosophy, so you can go through it. Then page 20, and you will see this is also asked frequently in previous papers, postmodern ethics, because this is the world we live in. Now, postmodern ethics is everything goes. We recognize diversity and we accept everything. We like to combine postmodern ethics with the Prince case. Prince still is a Rastafarian, and he used cannabis as part of his religious ceremonies, etc. And then he wanted to do his articles to become a lawyer, and he was not allowed because they said he was breaking the law by smoking cannabis. I know that have changed now through the Constitutional Court, that you are allowed to use cannabis privately, but remember Prince in your study guide. Try and link it with postmodern ethics, especially Judge Sachs, because the minority judgment that he gave in the Prince case in your study guide was purely postmodernism. You need to know the characteristics of postmodernism, very important, as well as the pros and the cons of an approach of postmodernism. Biggest negative thing is everything goes and no one knows anymore what is right or wrong or where are the rules. But go through it and underline 10 specific things that I can tick in the exam. Then on page 21, this is now in this new study guide. It wasn't in the previous one, African communitarianism. So you need to know Ubuntu, and then faith-based narratives. You will see it's very short. So this then concludes Learning Unit 2, the philosophical approaches. You need to know the rule-based approach, utilitarianism, virtue ethics, postmodern ethics. You need to be able to compare them, but most of all you need to know that our current system and our traditional system is the rule-based. And you need to have an opinion. Do you agree with it or not? Okay, this is then the end of Learning Unit 2. You will have to click on the next link for Learning Unit 3.